So let's talk about a very interesting extinct animal, the Irish elk. For some reason, there's a lot of misinformation surrounding the Irish elk, specifically, for some reason. To start off, a kind of nitpicky thing, but elk are technically deer, so all elk are deer, but not all deer are elk. That means that the elk are a member of the deer family, but all deer are not elk, if that makes sense. So the Irish elk is technically a species of deer, even though so are modern elk. Second, they're not found exclusively in Ireland. They're found in a bunch of different places. They are called the Irish elk, but that is not where they're found exclusively. So this is an Irish elk skeleton, and they are very well known for having those absolutely fucking massive antlers. And from this arises the most well-known bit of misinformation, which is that they are the reason that the Irish elk went extinct. So the kind of myth behind this is that the antlers on the elk were sexually selected so much that they became too big that the elk could not run anymore, and then therefore all got eaten to extinction by their predators. So theoretically that kind of makes a little bit of sense, but that's not really what happened, as far as we know. So, most likely, the large antlers did arise from some form of sexual selection in the same way that most deer antlers do. They just got selected because the males with the bigger, healthier antlers would usually produce healthier offspring. That makes sense. However, what does not make sense is that it would drive them to extinction. So the other part of the common myth is that when the males were being chased, they would run through forests and then their antlers would get snagged and caught, and then they would no longer be able to run, and so the predators would catch them easily, or that the antlers were just overall too heavy to run at all, neither of which are 100% true. So while, yes, the antlers were big and unwieldy and would likely get caught on branches and stuff, that just meant that they didn't live in forests. They lived in grasslands and open plains mostly. Like, this is obviously a painting, an artist's reconstruction, whatever, but you can see they're not in the forest. They're on, like, grassland with nothing for their antlers to get tangled in. You wouldn't live in an area that you're incapable of living in. If your antlers get stuck on tree branches, don't live in areas with trees. There's plenty of food out in the grasslands, so they didn't need to live in the forests, so they didn't. Now, the interesting part is that potentially the antlers could have had some role in the extinction of these, just not the one that is commonly stated. So the Irish elk lived during the Pleistocene time, and that was known for the ice being in an ice age. So, interestingly though, they lived at a time when the ice age was kind of ending, so global temperatures were becoming warmer. That led to the increase of forest areas. So, forests were rapidly taking over all of the grassland areas where the Irish elk lived. And as stated before, the Irish elk could not live very well in the forests. So, the decrease of land where they could potentially live led to a decrease in food. So they did not have enough food to sustain themselves. And, in addition, antlers require a lot of energy. So while growing such big antlers, there was not enough energy for them to sustain the other bodily functions because lots of the energy was growing to the antlers, so that potentially could have contributed to starvation of them because there was not enough food available to sustain the antlers, so they didn't have enough nutrition, etc., etc. However, that was not the sole cause of extinction. It did potentially lead to an overall decrease in antler size, so the males with the smaller antlers were actually more evolutionarily successful. So the antlers overall decreased. However, they still did end up going extinct due to other factors, probably same reason a bunch of other megafauna in that time period also went extinct. So basically, Irish elk are very interesting, and there's lots of myths surrounding them, and likely the giant antler myth was not the reason that they went extinct. It could potentially have contributed, but was not the whole reason, and not in the way that you think.